The only woman the Qur'an explicitly says, she will enter hell. The most wicked woman to ever live, in the past or future. She was wealthy and powerful, but even that couldn't save her. The astonishing life of this cursed woman, one who even Shaitan feared. Jamil, a tale of conflict, the war of disbelief against Islam. Watch now the untold story. To understand today's enemies of Islam, you must first understand her. She pioneered the tactics still used by Islam's enemies today. She pushed her husband to reject faith and used her influence to persecute Muslims. A woman so evil, even Shaitan would be shocked. Once again, we bring you a story that will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Support us. Subscribe to the channel. If you're ready, let's begin. Jamil was from Quraysh, one of the most influential tribes of Mecca. Her father, Hab bin Umayyad, was a highly respected Meccan leader. This gave Jamil a high social standing from birth. Though she came from a powerful family, it did not shape her into a woman of virtue. From an early age, she was ambitious, prideful, and filled with anger. She married Abū Lahab, the son of Abdul Muttalib, at a young age. Abū Lahab was among the wealthiest and most powerful men in Mecca. This wealth delighted Jamil, who loved status and luxury. Abū Lahab's success as a prominent Qurayshi merchant allowed Jamil to become one of the most talked-about women in the city, yet her most notorious trait was her sharp tongue. She was not just the wife of a rich man. She influenced the women of Mecca, spread gossip, and destroyed reputations. This fed her pride, but deep down she feared losing her status and the respect she had among the people. While many in Mecca were preoccupied with trade, others were focused on tribal honor. Jamil was obsessed with maintaining the power and image of her family and her husband. To her, nothing was more important than the leadership of Quraysh, especially the prominence of the Umayyad family. But one day, shocking news spread in Mecca. Hazrat Muhammad, said that he was the messenger of Allah. For Jamil, this was like a disaster. She knew the family line of the Prophet very well. He was from the family of Hashim, which was also a strong part of Quraysh. But if Hazrat Muhammad was really a Nabi, wouldn't her power be in danger? For Jamil, the real issue was not truth, but control. If Islam spread in Mecca, the rule of Quraysh would change, and her proud world would fall apart. That is why she became one of the first women to fight against Islam. Her husband, Abū Lahab, had already started to oppose the Prophet, but Jamil took this hatred even further. She did not only stand against Islam, she tried everything to destroy it, to bring down the honor of the Prophet and to scare the believers. Her poisonous words could be heard in the narrow streets of Mecca, in the courtyards of houses, and around the Kaaba. She was not just an enemy. She became a source of fitna. But her real battle was only starting. For Jamil, Islam was not just a belief. It was a serious danger to her life. There was one man in Mecca who stood against the system that had existed for years, Hazrat Muhammad, Abdullah, and she was ready to do anything to stop this new deen from spreading. At first, she did not take it seriously. When she heard about Hazrat Muhammad's claim to Nubuwah, she thought it would not last long. But as more and more people followed him, Jamil was filled with fear and anger. Together with her husband, Abū Lahab, she became one of the leaders who fought against this new deen. Jamil had a strong influence on the women of Mecca. A single word from her could spread across the city very quickly. She used this power to harm Islam. By creating lies and spreading false stories, Muhammad is crazy, she would say. He is a magician, she would warn people. He is a liar who is breaking the order of Makkah, she would claim. Her lies were not just to trick people. Her real goal was to damage the honor of the Prophet and push people away from him. She even used the lowest methods to achieve this. One day in the market of Mecca, she gathered people and shouted, "Muhammad is even harming his own family." But the truth was the complete opposite. The Prophet was the most honest and trustworthy man in Mecca, yet Jamil tried to destroy his name with lies. Jamil's biggest enemy was Hazrat Khadija. She was one of the most respected women in Mecca, and also the strongest supporter of the Prophet. Jamil felt great jealousy towards Hazrat Khadija. She made fun of her, encouraged the women of Mecca to turn against her, and tried to make her feel alone. However, no matter what she did, she could not succeed against the calm and dignified stance of Hazrat Khadija. She threatened the women who visited her, saying, "If you keep meeting with her, we will exclude you from society." But Hazrat Khadija, radiallahu anha, remained patient and strong against these lies. The man in her heart was much greater than Jamil's anger. Jamil did not only use words, she also tried every way to stop Islam in action. She made plans to scare the new Muslims and force them to leave Islam. She provoked the leaders of Quraysh to increase pressure on the Muslims. She placed stones and thorns on the paths where the Prophet walked to harm him. She encouraged people to remove Muslims from trade and social life. One day, while the Prophet was praying near the Kaaba, Abū Lahab and Jamil ordered their men to throw filth on him. They did not hesitate for even a moment to insult the most noble and honest man in Mecca. But no matter how much they tried, the number of Muslims kept growing every day. This drove Jamil mad. Lies and slander were no longer enough for her. She began to plan to kill the Prophet. For many years, Jamil was one of the biggest enemies of Islam. But her name was not only mentioned in the streets of Mecca, it was also written in the Qur'an as one of the cursed ones forever. Abū Lahab and Jamil became more violent against the Muslims as Islam spread, but no matter what they did, the truth of Allah would win. Surah Al-Masad was a clear curse from Allah upon Abū Lahab and his wife. When the surah was revealed, the fate of Jamil and Abū Lahab was sealed. One day the Prophet stood on Safa hill and called out to the people of Quraysh, "O people of Quraysh, if I told you that there is an army behind this mountain, ready to attack, would you believe me?" Everyone there answered, "Yes, because you have never lied." Then the Prophet said, "Then I warn you about a great punishment." A silence followed. This was the beginning of the open call to Islam. But Abū Lahab, full of anger, jumped up and shouted, "Did you gather us just to say this? May you perish." Then he quickly left. Because of these words, Allah revealed Surah Al-Masad. "May the hands of Abū Lahab be ruined, and ruined is he. His wealth will not benefit him or that which he gained. He will burn in a flaming fire. And his wife, the carrier of firewood, around her neck is a rope of fiber." This surah declared the terrible end of Abū Lahab and Jamil. The most striking part was the phrase, "the carrier of firewood." This described how she carried stones and thorns to harm the Prophet, but it also showed her evil and destructive nature. When Surah Al-Masad was revealed, Jamil became furious. To her, this surah was like a death sentence. People in Mecca were now talking about her fate. Even the leaders of Quraysh mocked her. One day, she picked up a large stone and planned to kill the Prophet. She went to Masjid al-Haram, thinking she saw him sitting there. Hazrat Abu Bakr was with him, but Jamil could not see the Prophet, even though he was right there. Instead, she turned to Hazrat Abu Bakr and shouted, "Where is your friend? I have come to harm him. He is the one who turned us against each other with his magic and lies." Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, calmly looked at her. Allah had made the Prophet invisible to her eyes, even though he was sitting right in front of her. Jamil shouted in anger, threw the stone in her hand, and quickly walked away. She knew that Surah Al-Masad had announced her end. But no matter how much she became angry, Allah's judgment would not change. The revelation of Surah Al-Masad was a great disaster for Abū Lahab and Jamil. They had tried everything to stop the rise of Islam, but Allah had already written their painful end. Their hatred for the Prophet was not limited to lies and oppression. Abū Lahab was one of the leaders who supported the social and economic boycott against the Muslims. This harsh boycott lasted for 3 years, causing great suffering for the Muslims. But neither Abū Lahab nor Jamil could stop Islam from growing. However, their cruelty only led to their own destruction. Allah had already informed through Surah Al-Masad that Abū Lahab would suffer eternal punishment in Jahannam. His punishment in this world came in the form of humiliation and disease. A deadly illness spread across Makkah, and one day Abū Lahab was struck by a terrible disease. It was so horrifying that no one dared to go near him. Even the people of Quraysh abandoned him. He died alone, suffering in pain. For years, Jamil had supported her husband and walked with him on the path of oppression. But when the time came, she even abandoned her own husband. After Abū Lahab died, his body was left exposed. No one wanted to approach or bury him. Eventually, a few men were paid to dispose of the body. They threw it into a pit and covered it with stones. And just like that, all the wealth, status, and pride they once held vanished. Following Abū Lahab's death, Jamil was left alone. The once powerful and arrogant woman, who believed she controlled everything, was suddenly left weak and helpless. People in Mecca began whispering, saying that Surah Al-Masad had come true, that Allah's curse had descended upon her and her husband. But Jamil refused to accept her downfall. She continued to walk the streets of Mecca, filled with hatred, spreading her anger against the Muslims. However, as time went on, she too grew weaker, both physically and in spirit. Historical accounts describe her death as dreadful. Some narrations state that a large stone fell on her, crushing her. Others say she died strangled, a rope wrapped around her neck. The verse from Surah Al-Masad, "Around her neck is a rope of palm fiber," was fulfilled in the manner of her death. Jamil and Abū Lahab were among the fiercest enemies of Islam. But in the end, they could not escape Allah's punishment in this life. They once rejoiced in their wealth, influence, and arrogance, but their end was marked by disgrace, pain, and suffering. Their story is not just a personal consequence, but a lasting warning to every disbeliever and oppressor until the day of judgment. O Allah, do not make us among those whose hearts are sealed, like Abū Lahab and Jamil. Grant us lives of peace, justice, and noble character, following the path of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Cleanse our hearts of pride, envy, and hatred. Keep us steadfast on the straight path. Ameen.